meant to sing 10 steps to unlock your inner voice. I am super excited to be part of this summit produced by Danita Austin and Austin Inc. Studios. I was lucky enough to be a featured author on their Passport to Discovery volume that was released last fall. And I am truly blessed and grateful to be able to share this message with all of you. So this is about finding resiliency through yoga and meditation. I'll tell you first a little bit about my own journey. I did yoga teacher training when I lived in New York many years ago, and that's always been a part of my practice, a part of my exercise regime, but also a part of something that kept me centered. The first yoga class I took when I was 18 years old, before it was really well known in the way that it is today. And I am super grateful for all of those experiences that started unleashing what the possibility was within both yoga and meditation. In terms of meditation, my journey has taken a lot of different routes. First, we did basic meditation as 5 minutes of every class when I learned yoga teacher training. And I've also studied Buddhist meditation. I did transcendental meditation. I've done a lot of guided meditation. And now I often find myself leading meditation classes. I do that at Insight LA, a really well-known meditation studio in Los Angeles and Santa Monica. And I'm really grateful for all of those opportunities because I find that all of those pieces of yoga, meditation, and then my background, I am a classical singer and pianist by training. And so I studied music my whole life and centered a lot of my work life around music. And I managed to really tap into other elements of my voice. The more I sat with yoga, the more I sat with meditation. And what I uncovered was the truth of having that instrument within our bodies is that we have this powerful piece that we're born with, that we have, that we can create vibration, we can create change, we can create so much with the power of our voice through singing, through speaking, and through all of our words and vibration, and even just creating noise with our voices, because sound is vibration. So I'm really excited to share with you today because my topic is meditation and the power of mantra, healing the throat chakra through singing and words. So where do we begin with that? The first part is, are you really aware that you have the power to actually change your life through the power of your words, through your voice? And, you know, what is it that is blocking you? Do you feel like you're in full expression of your voice? And I'm here to show you that you can embrace the full expression of your voice through just simply two things: changing your story and using the power of mantra. And those two things alone will completely reframe anything in your life and how you approach your life. So the first question that I ask is that we all have a story, right? We all have a story of trauma. We all have a story of something bad that happened to us. We all have stories of things that are good that happened to us. In essence, though, good and bad are really just polarities, because everything that happens to us is ultimately a learning experience if we really sit with that. So what I ask you to do is just ask yourself this following question. And it comes from the second chapter of my book, because I feel like this question is imperative to really embrace where you are today, where you would like to be, and elements of either of these three stages that might be present in your life right now, and how you can use them to transform. So the question is, are you a victim? Are you a survivor? Or are you a transformer? So what does this mean? Victim mentality, you hear a lot of different things about victim mentality, but in the way I'm discussing it here, If you're a victim, you're blaming everyone else for your problems. You're blaming your parents, you're blaming your spouse, you're blaming your children, you're blaming pretty much everyone except yourself. Because once you take responsibility for whatever is showing up in your life, that's the first piece. And I certainly have been a victim at times in my life, meaning choosing to be the victim. My mother had bipolar disorder. She was an incredibly difficult person. So when I was in that space, I would blame her for everything. Everything that was wrong in my life was my mother's fault. My mother is no longer here. She is deceased now. And I see her now with such an open heart, because every difficulty that I had with her actually changed who I am as a person. It gave me the tools to do this work. It gave me the tools to find my own voice. It gave me the tools to be able to help others find the full expression of their voice. And that is the transformer piece of it. When I was stuck in the victim mentality, I would tell anyone and everyone who got super close to me that, you know, my mother this, my mother that, my mother this, my mother that. And, you know, I can't really blame anyone who was friends with me at that time if they didn't stick around, because I would have gotten tired of myself during that time. And anyone who's in that victim mentality, either you're in it or you've heard other people be in it, it's draining after long periods of time. There is a time when you need to acknowledge things that happen to you and feel through it and be with the emotions and be with the trauma and really acknowledge all of the feelings. And then there's a point where the lesson needs to be learned and then moved into a different space. So when you go from the victim mentality and then you move into survivor mode is when you make a choice to do something that pushes you into a space where you don't actually have to deal with how you feel. And I talk about this in my book, but my go-to, which I learned very, very well from my father, was to actually work. And not just work, but work all the time. And I worked in the classical music industry. I was doing arts administration after having my degree as a classical pianist. And when I was in that field, I pretty much defined everything about who I was by my job. It was my accomplishment, my goals, my social life, all of my closest friends, every single thing in my life revolved around classical music. And I was very good at it, and I loved it in a lot of ways. But as I started to kind of feel that gnawing at me, and it was when I was living in New York, I remember distinctly I was in a job in a music publishing company where I actually loved the aspect that I traveled all the time. So I traveled 2 or 3 times out of the month to various cities in the United States for orchestra premieres. And at that time, I loved going to concerts. I loved hobnobbing with people, going to fancy restaurants, drinking really expensive wine. Every part of that I really enjoyed. But what happened was, when I really started to heal and I stepped into the space of healing, then I had this moment, and I remember because I was in St. Louis at the time, and I just went on a walk outside in between meetings that I had, and I realized that I felt nothing. I felt numb, completely numb. I couldn't feel good, I couldn't feel bad, and so I knew that something needed to change. And in that moment, I realized, maybe for the first time in my life, that I had really just been surviving. My mother tried to commit suicide when I was 25, and there was an element that shut down within me. And I just never really dealt with the pain that was there, with the grief that was there, with really having someone as a parent that wasn't capable of loving herself. And so all of a sudden, everything shifted. And when I realized that, but it took many years before I really was able to break free of that survival mode and really turn it around as a tool for transformation. It took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of singing, actually. It took a lot of work with the mantras. It took a lot of work with really looking deeply at myself and why I was choosing the things I did and why I was doing the things I did. And every step along the way really helped me. It helped me formulate the tools. It helped me give the structure for how I formulated the book and the program, and gave me the gifts to be able to help you and others really step into the space of empowerment. Now, if I had come in to this world and had somebody that was super supportive all the time and super kind, and that I wouldn't have had the need to go through those things to step into that space. So I feel just super grateful for everything that happened in my life that way, because I really understand that that is what was necessary for me to heal. So what did I do with the healing? Now moving into my process in terms of the voice and the power of sound. As I shared with you already, I am a classical musician, was a pianist and a singer, and my voice was really shut down. And it was in part because of what I just shared about my mother and her really telling me I had a child's voice when I was younger and my voice would never develop, and various things that I believed when I was young. However, I always sang. I sang in choirs, I would sing in church, I sang throughout college, I sang after college when I lived in New York. The only time I really stopped singing was actually when I took what I thought was my dream job in Los Angeles at the Los Angeles Philharmonic, where I was programming concerts at Disney Hall and the Hollywood Bowl. And there were parts of that job that I loved. And then I realized, though, that what was necessary for that job was that I had to shut down all of the creativity within myself because there just wasn't time left for me. And so as I moved through that process of really shifting my own needs in that regard and my own voice and listening to my voice, it was really challenging, because as I went through it, I realized that every single thing of how I defined who I am and myself actually was defined through my job. And so leaving that job was like extricating a limb. And so for any of you that are in jobs that you feel like you can't see the way out, you don't know what's going to happen, I will tell you it is possible to shift and it's possible to change. And it took me a long time to figure all of these things out. And so when I really put this program and the mantras together and talking about sound, it was really to give you the tools so that you could do it faster. Because I really feel like the shift is anything I went through myself, and going through those shifts, if I can help people get there faster and find their joy and find their expression in their voice in this way, then I really am stepping into my power to help other people step into theirs. And I feel it's very important to do that by example. So when we move into music and vibration, everything vibrates. And this is something I often talk about in the beginning of the sound baths that I lead, in the beginning of events. Every single thing vibrates. And everything just vibrates at different frequencies. So we can look at the notes on the musical scale, which vibrate at specific frequencies. In Western tuning, usually the A is tuned at 440 hertz. In sound healing circles, often the A is tuned at 432 hertz. And when you really step into that space of really recognizing that yes, music vibrates, this vibrates, but so does the floor, and so do the walls, and so does the chair. And everything vibrates at different frequencies, which is what gives it its form. So when you're working with sound and you're working with mantra, the power of your words is so important, because you start by what I just shared of changing your story into a story of transformation and really taking what could be the story of a victim or a survivor and transforming it. Maybe it ends up being your life path and your work, or maybe it just ends up being how you share and show up in your life with your loved ones, your friends, your family, and people around you and your community. It doesn't really matter. The bigger point is that you're able to step into that power. So the vibration of the words, they actually change a neurological pattern in your brain when you do positive affirmations. And some of them, some of them can feel totally dorky when you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you are saying these things to yourself. However, I promise you that they work. And when you're really looking at mantras, mantras are so powerful that they actually can change the physiological structure in your brain. And if you look at sports psychology, for example, in sports psychology, they use mantras all the time. And Olympic athletes are known for actually implementing meditation, for reframing a race, for visualization exercises, and also for positive affirmations, which is the same thing as mantra. And so when you do that, you actually are affecting the psychological element of your brain. Because if you keep telling yourself like, I am fast, I am fast, I am fast, then in essence, you are also telling your body that, and your body starts to believe you. It's in the same way as if you had a parent that was being very destructive and told you, you can't sing, you can't sing, you can't sing, you can't sing. Somewhere in your brain, you believe you can't sing, even if the truth is you actually can. So when really taking that from sports, you can really step into the power of what a mantra is. The positive affirmation of something that is in your native language, whether it be English or another language. Or you can use Sanskrit mantras, which have been around for thousands of years, and they carry specific vibrations that you can use to shift energy in your life as well. So what happens when you actually step into a mantra and you decide which one you're working on? Well, and similar to the metaphor of the sports analogy that I just made, it's like a detox effect. So the principles of healing, when you're dealing with more alternative healing, energy healing, is that when you start to heal, what actually happens is that everything that's been blocking you from the thing you want to heal will come up to the surface to be cleared. So it sounds counterintuitive, right? You start chanting a mantra, and then you might feel good for the first week or so, and then you hit weeks 2 or 3 and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel worse. Oh, wow, I haven't felt like that in a long time. Oh, I'm having these weird memories come out of nowhere. I don't really know what's happening here. That is actually the mantra working. So it's similar to if you've ever done a juice fast, which I did once when I was in a really difficult place after I moved to Los Angeles and my father had just passed away, and I felt really depressed. And so I did all this research because they were trying to put me on pharmaceutical drugs, and I was like, no, I don't really need that. And so I went and I did this juice fast. And I've been crying for months about my dad, about work being stressful, all of these different things. And so when I went to the juice fast, and really sitting with it, I actually didn't cry the whole week, but I was super angry. And I was like, wow, I hadn't really felt angry before. And I understand now, having gone through grief, that anger is really just a stage of grief that also has to be processed in the same way that sadness needs to be processed. So all of these things are really important parts of healing. And if you really look at it, even with a bruise or a scar, sometimes it hurts more as it's healing than it did when it initially happened. And so it's the same principles of healing. So when you start chanting a mantra, it will bring stuff up to the surface. And this is how it has the power to heal. And if you know this going in, then it's not so scary, because then if you know that something is going to come up and you're going to step into this vibration, then you're going to really feel the power of it once you push through that stage. I can tell you one client who worked with me earlier this year, she really was feeling shut down, depressed, and she was a singer-songwriter, was not sharing her music with anyone, and it was actually really good music. And as we went through for maybe 4 of the 6 weeks that we worked together, she cried every day. She would check in. She's like, I don't even know what this is. And we uncovered all of this stuff about her family history, things that had happened when she was 16, things that happened with her parents that were really tragic, and things she just never emotionally dealt with. So what happened is that all of these things came up to the surface to release. And once she hit week 5, she noticed a shift. She ran into this producer, ended up sending her songs, ended up deciding to go to Nashville by the end for a couple months to go really get her music out there. And all of these opportunities went. And the last time I heard from her, she was so happy she couldn't contain herself. So that just like makes my heart big, because that's really the power that your words and mantra have. And it clears all the energy in the throat chakra when you really step into that space. And I'll also share another story about my journey with my mother, because I talk about this also in my book, but how I started to really move from survivor to transformer was I used a very well-known mantra that comes from the Hawaiian shamans of Ho'oponopono. And it's, I'm sorry, thank you, please forgive me, I love you. And you can say that, and there are different orders in different places, but I really literally would chant that while thinking of her picture for weeks. And I'll tell you that before my mom died, I was so grateful to have done that, because I really felt like we had a healing space before she passed. And I dedicated my book to her. She didn't live to see it published, but she did live for me to tell her and read her the dedication, which also made her cry. So I just want to reiterate, it is absolutely possible for you to find this resiliency, to find the forgiveness, and whatever it is that you are calling in your life. And these mantras really work through stuff that's underneath. I'll tell you one last story of a mantra that I worked with, and it was Om Tare Tutare Soha. And that mantra is with the green Tara, who is a goddess. And the energy of her mantra is liberation from the 8 limbs of fear. It has other meanings too, but right now I'm just going to address that. And at the time I was like, I still feel afraid to put myself out there. I still feel afraid to kind of be in my full expression. And who am I if I can't like do it myself? How am I going to like help lead all these other people? And it was literally the summer right before I launched this program. And I chanted it for probably 2 months every day. And every single fear I had in my life was in my face. And you think it sounds strange, but it's not. Because when you decide how you want to feel at the end and you're not feeling it now, it will come up to the surface to clear. And that I can promise you, but it is so worth it on the other side. And I had one last client, I'll share, who also worked with me earlier this year. And she really wanted to heal her heart center. And so as we were going through, what was so interesting is that her ex-boyfriend, who she hadn't seen in a few years, ended up moving just down the block from her. I'm not kidding. And when he came to see her, they were able to have this really deep healing about what their relationship had been. And I was so proud of how she stepped into that space of healing by having life circumstance bring it up. So if you don't really fully believe me, I promise you, just try the mantra and it will happen. It happens to everyone I've ever worked with. And it's the beauty and the magic of how raising our vibration to a different state gives us this opportunity to really heal and to step into the fullness of our power in this life. So what are the next stages? Like, what are you going to do with this? So the prescribed way of chanting mantra is to chant 108 times a day for at least 40 days. So I recommend, and I'm going to grab them right here, grabbing a set of mala beads like these, the mala beads, if you get a proper set of mala beads, they have 108 beads on them. So why 108? Well, original mantras in Sanskrit has 54 letters in its alphabet and has also a divine feminine and masculine form. And so within that structure, there's 108. 54 from the masculine, 54 from the feminine. And the language, that's the language that has the primary amount of mantras. But again, like I said, you can also do them in English. 108 is also a multiple seen often in mathematics. And so what I'll show you is this picture, actually, I have right here, of the Sri Yantra. So the Sri Yantra, if you see it, it has 54 points of intersection. And in these points of intersection, there's again the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So when you're looking at this picture, you can really see that is also 108. And then the other pieces of 108 that shows up is also with the sun and the moon. So there are a lot of ways that you can really see, because it's the distance between the sun and the moon and the diameter of the sun, and they're all multiples of 108. So you can look that up on your own time, but 108 is seen as a very auspicious number that way. And the last piece of that is, if you look at astrology, there are 12 sun signs and 9 houses, and 12 times 9 is also 108. So there is something special about that number. And in my experience, personally, and holding space for others, 6 weeks is really the minimum amount of time to have a massive change in your system, a massive change in consciousness, and a massive change in your vibration and what you're attracting into your life. So you can start with the mantras I suggest in my book. You can start as simply with Om, which is actually 3 syllables, A, U, Om, so Aum, which is said to be the sound of creation, the original mantra. And even if you just chant that 108 times a day, you're gonna start to feel a shift in your daily life. Because any of these mantras really do change the vibration field in your body, in your mind, and in your spirit. I can't recommend doing these mantras highly enough, because the power of them, once you sit and you do the mantras and you sit with them and you meditate and hold that space afterwards, you will start to feel the shift. So just to recap and bring it back, what can you do? You can change your story from being a victim or a survivor to being a transformer. That is really step 1. Step 2, identify whatever in your life is not working and how you would prefer to feel as different than you feel in the present moment. And then choose a mantra based on how you want to feel, not on how you're feeling now, but how you want to feel. And then get a set of mala beads and start chanting 108 times a day for 40 days. And I promise you that combined with meditation will completely change your life. And I'm so happy to have had you listen today, to be here with me, to be here for this amazing summit with Austin Ink Studio and Danita Austin. And I really look forward to connecting with you over my websites, Sacral Sounds and youarementtosing.com. And I can't wait to share more, and I can't wait to hear you sing and change your story and create the mantras that will forever change your life. Thank you so much. sending you so much love and energy, and I can't wait to connect with you soon. Namaste.